Right now, though, let's take you inside the Emily Gets Her Gun book release party held last night in Washington, D.C. Cameron Gray, myself, were out there. Cameras along as well, and Cameron himself spoke with the author. Take a look.
Here in Washington, D.C. at the Emily Miller official book release party. Emily, how exciting is this?
Emily got her gun.
You got your party and you got your book.
I got it all now. No, it's really exciting, and it was just amazing to have everyone in the gun community and the Second Amendment activists and everyone here together, and it's just an amazingly special night for me.
I can only imagine. So, okay, of course, here on NRA News, we've been following the story. You've been talking about how you got your gun, but for the people who don't know exactly what the book is about, explain it.
Well, the book is about what's happened on the assault of the Second Amendment since Newtown and since Obama started exploiting that horrible tragedy of those children, and it unfortunately has had some success backed by Bloomberg's money in passing gun control in 5 states and still trying to pass it in the Senate, even though they couldn't get 60 votes this year. And so it's about all these gun control laws that are spreading around the country, and public support has increased, whereas the experience I had here in Washington, D.C. when I got a gun last year was it took me 4 months and 17 steps to get a gun that I'm not allowed to take out of the house. And so these are the kinds of laws that the president and Bloomberg are trying to put all over the country. And I'm telling you, crime is up in D.C., but people like me, law-abiding people, can't get guns to defend themselves. And I really just want to wake people up to what's going on and to give them the facts they need so they can arm themselves and talk to their colleagues and talk to their neighbors about the real facts about gun control and violence.
All right, so let's talk about Bloomberg's money for a minute. We just recently got back from covering the Colorado recalls. We were out there for a few days where Bloomberg's money did not succeed. How happy does that make you?
I mean, Colorado recall elections were just such a huge win for democracy. And it was just so amazing. It was organic. I mean, those people, nobody backed them. I mean, they just Democrats. I mean, these Democrat districts were saying these are not Colorado values, these gun control laws. And they did it, and Bloomberg got terrified and spent, from I'm hearing from the Republican Party of Colorado, $2.5 million, as much as that, and way outspent the NRA, way outspent everybody else. Yet the people of Colorado still said, we are so angry, we're recalling the Senate Democratic leader. And people keep saying to me, who's that? I'm like, it's like if America recalled Harry Reid. Exactly. It's the equivalent. That's what they just did. It's fantastic. Now, unfortunately, the downside is they can't recall their laws. So these people in Colorado are still under this ridiculous gun control law where they have a 15-round magazine limit, and people have to go through these background checks for private exchanges. None of it's making anyone safer. None of it's preventing crime. Crime will continue to go down in America with or without these gun control laws, but the law-abiding will be affected. So as much as it's a victory and it shows where the public is pushing back now, it's still a shame that these laws are in place, and I hope other people in American states that are considering these look at Colorado and look at the way they regret the decisions they made.
Well, the other thing, too, is, you talk about your book, and it's citizen journalism, and you got a lot of things done here in Washington. And the media is saying, oh, it's a big victory for the NRA. But the NRA admittedly got into it after grassroots support. You have a plumber in Pueblos who did it in her own district. You have these guys, just normal guys in Morse's district. So we met them all. We had them all on the show. It seems like such a good cautionary tale and a great story for others.
Well, I mean, and I have to say, by virtue of writing my series in the Washington Times, 2 laws changed in Washington to make it easier to register a gun. And it's just when people just fight for these rights and fight for their constitutional rights, and they know what's black and white and what's in the Constitution, look at the success you can have. And when I did this Colorado story, I wrote about it last week, I've never had a story where I call the NRA and I call the Colorado Republican Party and both deny any responsibility. It's unbelievable. Nobody wanted credit. They're like,
but all the rest of the press say this is a big victory for the NRA.
Right, and both the NRA and the Colorado Republicans were like, we don't have enough money to throw around like this. This is really expensive. Now we have to because Bloomberg got in it. I've never had something where nobody wants credit because they're like, it's just, and that is just really just I found so powerful. This was so just the democracy worked and the people spoke out. And it's where I had here in Washington, D.C. I mean, I was so angry that I had to take a written test and a 5-hour class and 17 steps just to defend myself at home. And that made me, start getting involved in Second Amendment policies.
All right, as someone who myself will never, ever be invited onto the Piers Morgan show, what is that experience like? Because that video went pretty viral. You pretty much took him down, I will easily admit. What is it like to be face-to-face with someone who is so anti-gun?
Well, I was surprised by how Piers Morgan was so red-faced and angry and temperamental. But what surprised me even more about Piers Morgan is that he was so short on facts. And when he said just casually, the more guns there are, the higher crime is. And I just had to interrupt him. I'm saying, actually, that's not true. Gun crime has gone down every year for the past 20 years. It's gone down 40%. And gun ownership has gone the other way. It's increased dramatically. So I don't understand. I mean, he has, but then we go back into emotion. So then he goes, well, there's this story of these people and, some sad story. And of course, it's a sad story. Okay, so what are the facts? And it was about an accidental shooting. And I said, that's a sad story, but there's only about 700 a year. That's not to say all those people don't matter, but it's not an epidemic. It's not a huge crisis. So, in a lot of times in arguing with the left, it's emotion and it's feelings, and you just come back with facts. And how can you argue facts?
What is in this book that would attract someone who is not a gun owner, that doesn't care about the Second Amendment, not an NRA member? Of course, you have to write a book for lots of different audiences. Why would someone who is not interested in the topic so much be interested in this book?
Well, I think it's about how much the federal government has grown in the past 4 or 5 years since Obama's been president, and how it's invading so many parts of our lives where we don't want it, whether it's our health care, whether it's spending, budget. I mean, there's just so many parts, and now we have things like the IRS going after conservative groups. We've got the NSA spying on us. So the Second Amendment is about protecting the government from being too big and being tyrannical. That's why it was written. And so this is really just about large government and where we really want to be as a country.
All right, last question. You live in Washington, D.C. I'm in Northern Virginia, just close enough, but not too close. Can you, in like an elevator speech, explain how screwed up the city council, the city government is? It's an awfully run city, correct?
This is the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and I often say, I don't live in America. I live in Washington, D.C., because it is so screwed up. They honestly don't follow the Constitution. It's really quite unbelievable. And what kills me is they want to be a state. Yeah. And I mean, over my dead body.
And get the Olympics, too.
They can have the Olympics, but over my dead body, will this place be a state if I don't have the right to bear arms in it? I mean, it's absolutely outrageous.
All right, so of course, where do people get the book? Where should they go? Where they find your stuff online too?
It's at WashingtonTimes.com and Washington Times newspaper, of course. And then my book is at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, anywhere books are sold, as they say.
What is it like to have our old president, David Keene, as your boss?
It's so great having David Keene's the best boss, and it's so funny because I used to interview him when he was the NRA president. Now he's the opinion editor of the Washington Times, and he keeps saying to me in meetings, "Well, Emily, this is off the record." And I'm like, David, we are the record now. The difference is, instead of you getting mad at me if I write something you didn't want me to write, you can fire me. And so he was like, oh, well, that's better.
That's awesome. Well, congrats on the party. Congrats on the book. Good to see you as always.
Thank you. It's always great to thank you for being here.
Emily Miller, author of Emily Gets Her Gun. It is out now. Rave reviews. Go pick it up.